Recently, I was looking at some exquisite pictures of very diverse shapes. I was intrigued by their beauty, their complexity, and their enormous diversity, and I wondered what they could possibly be. My imagination took me to all sorts of possibilities, and I was so curious. To my utter amazement, they all turned out to be magnified images of grains of sand. This is the sand we walk upon when we go to the beach. If there is one thing we notice about these grains of sand, it is this, that no two of them are alike. They are entirely different from each other. Yet each is beautiful. Each is perfect in its own way. Isn't that how human beings are? Just look around you, and you will see what a motley crew we are. No two of us are alike. None of us looks like, acts like, or sounds like the person next to them. Each of us is wonderfully imperfect, and in being so, each of us is wonderfully perfect. When we stop expecting people to be perfect, then we can start appreciating them and loving them and even liking them for who they are. Jesus tells us to be perfect as our Heavenly Father is perfect. How can we ever be as perfect as God? Well, there are two ways of being perfect. The first is impossible, unattainable. But the second is attainable to all of us. And this is what Jesus was talking about. Be perfect by being the person you are. The person God created you to be. Be perfectly imperfect. Be perfect in all your quirks, all your idiosyncrasies, all your imperfections, all your perceived flaws. Because you too are a unique manifestation of God's perfection. Let us recognize perfection in imperfection. Often we seem to think that the definition of perfect is just like me. Nothing could be further from the truth. We all realize perfection. We all embody the perfect, each in our own unique and imperfect way. In her first book, Mandy Hale writes, "Your message, your ministry, your influence is built from your flaws. People relate to humanity, not perfection. God can turn your biggest flaws into your biggest cause." There is no such thing as an intrinsically disordered person. God does not make things or people or grains of sand disordered. Every person around us is a wonderfully imperfect and a wonderfully perfect grain of sand, each unique and beautiful in its own way. Sometimes it feels very good to walk barefoot along that sandy beach. When I first came to California, that was one of the things I loved to do the most. Each one of those grains of sand, each different in its own way, has been deposited right there in our path by the universe, by that perpetually moving roll of waves, which we might call God. Each of those grains of sand, yes, each of these human beings as well, has been placed in our path in order to make contact with us. Some of them by touching us, and others by touching others who touch us. Each of these grains, each of these people add to and enrich our life. Sometimes as we walk along that beach of life, we may encounter grains with particularly sharp and ragged edges, and they hurt us. Do we ever stop to think that perhaps they are hurting because we are stepping on them? When examined closely under the microscope, those with the sharpest and the pointiest edges are some of the most beautiful of all, because it is these that have the form of the stars. We are perfect in our imperfection. St. Teresa used to say that if you are a little wildflower, don't try to be a rose. Don't try to be a lily. Don't try to be something you're not. Just be the best little wildflower you can. Some of us are very wild flowers indeed. Be the best you can as God created you. Don't try to be anything else. Embrace perfection in all its forms, and you will discover a beauty you never saw before. You will find that what you thought was imperfection, what you perceived as flawed, turns out to be nothing less than a unique and truly awesome manifestation of the perfection of God.